Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here, another episode of Meaningful Live. Are you productive? This program is dedicated in honor of Bonnie Kellogg with gratitude and warm wishes on her birthday. So it sounds like such a generic question, are you productive? I think most people would say in some way they're productive. They're productive at work. They may be productive in their personal lives, their social lives. But very often, when you start thinking about it, you start asking yourself the question, what does productive even mean? What does it mean to be productive? Does it mean that people like you? Does it mean that you've produced something, that you've accomplished something? I mean, is it superficial? Is it a psychological state of mind? Are there some people who are not productive, but they think they're productive? And there are people who are productive and they think they're not? So it's a big question when you start really considering it. Just let me begin sharing straight from, just from my gut, if I wish, if I may, if you allow me to. I remember when I was writing Toward a Meaningful Life, and I came to the chapter called Work and Productivity. So I tried in that book to always get to the core, to the point of departure. What does that mean, work and productivity? You know, what happens if you were blessed and you inherited enough money that you never have to work the rest of your life? You don't have to have a job. You have enough to pay your bills, or more than that. Beyond that, there are people in that situation. On one hand, it's a blessing. Many people see it at the end of the day, not such as a great blessing, not the money part, but you end up, what happens with you? So what happens to a human being that is not working or is not productive because they are given everything they need by someone else? And that became very much for me the core of the chapter of getting to the heart. Do we need to be productive people? Not just whether we are productive, do we need to be productive? And what happens when we're not? Unfortunately, you look around, there are people who are in that position where someone else is paying their bills. Now, their egos may convince themselves that they are doing something for it. Very often they're not. But it's hard to accept. But even a person like that has a certain element of shame. They want to be able to say, I earned my way. Why do they have to say that? Why can't you just say, I was blessed, I'm privileged, I feel a sense of entitlement, I was blessed, someone else worked hard, my parents, my grandparents. Because there's something about human nature that needs to produce. And I'll use a few statements from the sages, really tremendous wisdom in these ideas. First of all, there's an expression in Aramaic called nema dechsufa. It literally means bread of shame. That when you receive a gift that you didn't earn, it's called bread of shame. The person is ashamed by it a bit. Doesn't mean they won't use it, doesn't mean they won't eat the bread, doesn't mean they won't benefit from it, but there's something about it that, since you haven't earned it, something about it that makes you feel shameful. And some way you'll try to explain why you have earned it in a certain way. Or even if you don't explain, you'll just feel shame. Now, I know some people can get over that shame. Another expression from the Talmud. A person desires one measure more through their own efforts, more than they desire 9 measures that is given to them as a gift. In other words, if someone were to say, here's $9 million, or here's $1 million that you will earn through your efforts, you'd prefer the million. Now, you can buy a lot more with 9 million than with $1 million. And yet there's something about your effort, your initiative, that you created it, that is vital here. So I remember my great mentor, the Rebbe, which a book, Toward a Meaningful Life, is built on wisdom that I learned from him, which is really wisdom distilled from 90 generations of scholarship, Torah scholarship that goes back literally thousands of years. When he turned 70 years old, it was 1972, people were encouraging, time to slow down, you've accomplished so much. At this age, people start retiring. And obviously he dismissed all that, made it very clear that age is not determined on the passport and on your birthday, but the age is determined, it's based on your spirit. And as such, what does that mean? A human being, to use another verse from the book of Job actually, a person was created to toil, to work, which takes us to the very nature of the human being. That we are created to produce. That's who we are. And when we don't produce, we feel something is lacking. Excuse me. So even though while we're working hard, very often we dream about going on vacation, and we dream about getting a gift that I don't have to work that hard. But then when you're on vacation for too long, if you're a healthy person, you can't just lie on the beach all day. You feel you need to produce something. There's some angst in a healthy person that needs to produce. I say healthy people because I know people who have numbed that natural, healthy inclination and just convince themselves they don't have to do anything because they're supported by others. But a healthy person has that need because the soul is like a flame, and a flame by nature is restless. Imagine a flame being at peace with it not being restless. It would cease to be a flame. Life by definition is movement. Life by definition is a pulsating energy, constantly looking for something. You want to have as a good balance between tension and resolution. I've shared a number of times, I had this cardiologist used to come to my classes, sweetest guy. But he had a difficult personal life. He struggled with many different things. And one of the times, once after a class, he came over to me and said, "It's really been very difficult for me lately. Maybe you can do something, a prayer, something that my life should be calmer, without so much tension and anxiety." So he had a good sense of humor. So I said to him, "Doctor, you mean like a flat line?" He said, no, not that calm, not that relaxed. Now, of course, a flat line, we all know, in a cardiogram is not a good sign. What you want in a cardiogram is a wave, contraction, expansion of the heart, constant movement, breathing, exhale, inhale. You don't want a flat line. A flat line, yes, there will be no anxiety and there'll be no tension, but there's also no life. Life is defined by mobility, by movement. And that's what a human soul is. The flame, called the flame of God. It's constantly restless. So you never want to eliminate that. That's a healthy person. What you want to have is a proper balance. Too much, if the wave is too high, the peaks are too high and the valleys are too low, then you have an imbalance, too much tension or too much resolution, too much anxiety or too much calm. You need a constant balance, something tugging at you, you want more, but then finding a way to resolve it. In Hebrew, it's called Ratzeh V'Shuv. It's a verse from the book of Ezekiel that he saw the energy running to and fro, tension and resolution, a balance. Like I mentioned, contraction, expansion, exhale, inhale, the balance. Everything in life, like a pump, there's a positive and a negative. That's how energy flows. So that's a healthy human being. And as a result of that, since a person that's his natural state, so the Rebbe was saying back then, what are you asking me to what? To slow down? To stop producing? Producing, life and production go hand in hand. Yes, we may change how we produce. Obviously, when you're younger and perhaps more physically stronger, you can lift heavier weights. But production has many levels. You can also produce by teaching people. You can produce that doesn't require physical exertion, as other forms of exertion, mental exertion, emotional exertion, spiritual exertion. And then he said something which really was, to me, mind-blowing. He asked a question. He said, since God is good and fundamentally good, why couldn't he have created a human being with a nature where he does not have shame when he doesn't produce? It shouldn't be called bread of shame. So he received the gift. He feels good about it. Why can't it be that way? Why did he make it that way that a human being does not feel comfortable when he's not really producing? And his answer was beautiful, simple, but profound. Because God wanted us to be creators, not receivers. Didn't want us to be just on the receiving end. He wanted us to be initiators, to be proactive, to produce, to create, to be a creator like God is a creator. I found that to be amazing because it really gives us a whole different take on human nature. It's not like, okay, if you can provide for me, I'm fine with that. A human being has to always create. So being productive is being human. It's being healthy. It's being the real you. So it's not just the question is, how productive are you? Are you being productive? And see that as actually a value, not as a burden, not as a punishment, not as a chore. There was a time where work was seen as actually a punishment, as a result of the sin of the tree of knowledge. No, that you shall you should earn your bread by the sweat of your brow, considered a punishment. Work was for the inferior masses, not for the kings and for the princes and for the queens. Other people did labor. Later in the Calvinist approach, followed by Weber and others that taught the capitalistic system that ultimately that work, the Protestant work ethic, where work became part of serving God, which I've written and talked about at other times. But the fact of the matter is that's not the punishment. There was not to be that you don't have to be productive. Question is, how are you going to be productive? Do you have to sweat the sweat of your brow, or you can study and be productive in more spiritual and emotional and psychological growth? In many ways, today's world, with AI and technologies developing, in a way of preparing a world where not that we shouldn't be productive, but we should be productive in higher, more sublime matters, whereas machines can take care of other things. Even though they say, I wanted AI to wash the dishes and to clean my house so I can write poetry and compose music. Now AI is writing poetry and composing music, and I'm the one that's washing dishes. So the real goal is that these machines, even if they do write poetry, that we should be able to go beyond that, to use them to cover certain levels so we can pursue higher spiritual goals. In the words of Maimonides, a time when the business of the world will be to know God. The business of the world will be to access higher states of spiritual consciousness and awareness. But that's a different form of productivity, that's all. Productive doesn't always mean menial labor. So with that said, that's a critical point, because now you ask yourself, okay, if that's who I am, then okay, how productive am I? So let's talk about that now. What would productive mean? Productive means you're creating something. You're initiating something. And I always quote this tragic poem, but I find it to be very inspiring. Oliver Wendell Holmes, The Voiceless. Alas to those that die with their song still inside them. Alas to those that die with their song still inside them. Some people bring that together with Thoreau's quote, most men lead lives of quiet desperation and die with their song still inside them. But it's two separate quotes. Point being is this, we all have a song within us. Are you singing your song? Your creativity, your production, that's coming from you, not someone else's song, not satisfying someone else's needs, but you. That would be my definition. And it could take on many different shapes. It could take on the shape of art and music. It could take on the shape of kindness and benevolence. It can take on the shape of spiritual growth. It can take on the shape of gaining knowledge. But it has to in some way bring light to you and to others around you. It's not just about you taking. Me. What am I gaining? Unfortunately, that's very much called the conditioning, the training, or the lack of training that we have. That's our default position. Dog eats dog, survival of the fittest. No, you have something to give. And that's going to be the greatest thing that you can do for yourself. Many people think, if I take, I have more. When you give, you have more. Because you're really becoming yourself. You are giving what you are able to give. You're producing. And that's how we should define being productive. And it can take on many shapes and forms. Yes, very many people replace their productivity with the work they do. My boss is happy with me. I produced today a certain amount. Here are my measurable results. Not dismissing that at all. But if it's not something that's really coming from within your soul, you're doing labor. You have to work. You have no choice. Most people don't even like their jobs. Some learn to like it. And a few minority have a labor of love that they really love what they're doing. It's the reflection of their soul. But many people don't have that luxury. Many people even graduate with a degree and they can't even find a job, so they have to do something else. That's why you'll find people will say, you ask them, who are you? They'll give you their business card. And when I ask them, that's what you do, that's not who you are. Some will say with a sigh, I've been doing it so long, what I do is who I am has become what I do. When it should be the other way around. Who you are should define what you do, not what you do defines who you are. The ship shouldn't be telling the captain where to go. The captain should be telling the ship where to go. The body shouldn't be telling the soul where to go. The soul should be directing the body. Your mind should be telling your emotions where to go, not the other way around. At times, obviously, you need your emotional input. And you definitely need their engagement. So life sometimes turns the wrong direction. So being productive can be in any given area. Then I'll add one final point. That even when you're productive in a material way, like you feel you've really accomplished something at work today, you produced, whatever that production means, whether it's materials, whether it's services, whether it's actual volume, whether it's ideas, whether it's concepts, always always add that dimension of spiritualizing it. Don't let it just be a type of capitalistic, commercialized, industrial production. Something soulful. How it helps the human race. How it helps your coworkers. How it helps you. Karl Marx, that is, made a big case about the alienation that happens in capitalism, the alienation that people have from the product they're creating, alienation from their coworkers, alienations from their employers, and alienation from themselves. A way of integrating, and I'm not a Marxist by no means, but nevertheless, there's a lesson you can learn from that. I don't know if he got it, but even though he didn't consider himself exactly a believer, but the spiritual teachings teach exactly the same thing. Your work is a vehicle for spiritual expression. Everything you do has divine sparks in it. So to add to that whole dimension of the pulsating energy within everything, always see it as a part of the work allocated to you to elevating the sparks in your life. Whether it's the food you eat. You can eat a meal and be satisfied, or you could eat the meal thinking, wow, the food I'm eating has divine sparks. I'm elevating them. I'm using the energy I gain from this meal to help someone else. You're walking down the street, not just walking down the street to get somewhere. Maybe you're meant to meet somebody, say a kind word. Using your technology, your phones, or texting, emailing, social media. Say something, share a kind word, share a sympathetic thought, an insight. Everything we do, we can make even more productive by adding this soulful dimension. And those are briefly some thoughts on being productive on many levels. I hope they're helpful. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Love to hear your feedback, thoughts, comments, and please share with others. Be blessed, be productive, and sing your song, the one only you can sing.